Within the vast expanse of the cosmos, governed by immutable laws, humanity emerged, not to conform, but to challenge the established order. This tale defies all expectations, shattering preconceived notions about life in the universe. Alien botanists, creatures of meticulous record-keeping, found solace in the predictability of their profession. Paperwork, unlike sentient beings, never posed a threat. This preference for the predictable explains why Frankel Gribnitz, a squid-like botanist from the planet Quasun, chose his career path. Though the path of a warrior or politician beckoned, he opted for the tranquility of the plant world. His colleague, Blazer Friot, perpetually nervous, shared this appreciation for botanical stability. Their shared belief in the inherent order of plants made their current situation all the more disturbing. Floating unseen in their observation orb above a modest human dwelling on Earth, they were confronted with a sight so unsettling that even Blazer's multiple stomachs churned in unison. "Is that what I think it is, Blazer?" shrieked Frankel, his gelatinous form wobbling like a tremor-struck dessert. Frankel, adjusting his visual apparatus, peered intently at the leafy green plant in the Earthling's garden. "If your suspicions involve the Jalan spore fern," he confirmed, "then your observation is accurate." Blazer gestured wildly towards the flora in question. "But it's supposed to be extinct. How is it flourishing on this chaotic, meat-consuming, utterly perplexing planet?" Frankel shook his equivalent of a head. "A more pressing question is this: are you aware of the consequences should any living creature so much as touch one of those leaves? Instantaneous internal liquefaction." At that precise moment, a human emerged, a lanky, middle-aged individual clad in what the aliens had identified as flip-flops, humming a melody vaguely resembling a distorted version of a popular Earth song. Blazer gripped Frankel in a panic. "What's he doing?" "He's approaching the fern. Should we deploy a vaporizing ray?" Frankel brushed off Blazer's appendage. "We're botanists, Blazer. We don't possess weaponry of that nature." The human, blissfully unaware of the cosmic dread hovering mere meters above, bent and plucked several leaves from the Jalan spore fern. Then, with a nonchalance that bordered on suicidal, he popped a leaf into his mouth and chewed. "He's consuming it." Blazer's voice reached a frequency typically reserved for courtship rituals on his home planet. The human smacked his lips thoughtfully. "Need salt," he muttered, returning to his dwelling with a newfound pep in his step and a basket filled with what the aliens perceived as impending doom. Blazer slumped into a quivering mass. "He's expired. He's already expired. He simply hasn't realized it yet." But Frankel's instruments told a different tale. "No, he's not deceased. His vital signs are completely normal. In fact, he squinted at the readings, he's humming." "This is illogical." Blazer twitched violently. "Humans, they've likely developed an immunity by ingesting substances that should have obliterated them centuries ago. I've read that they consume solidified fat, referring to it as butter. I cautioned you about this planet's perilous nature. I warned you." Frankel disregarded him, captivated by the human, who reappeared moments later carrying what resembled a steaming cup of tea. "He's made it into a beverage," Frankel whispered in awe. "A beverage?" Blazer moaned pathetically. "We must alert the Galactic Council. This transcends our expertise, far transcends it. We'll be fortunate to escape blame for this planet's inevitable detonation." "No," Frankel asserted firmly. "We're scientists. We gather data. We analyze. And, if circumstances necessitate, we intervene." Blazer looked skeptical. "Intervene? How? Implore him to cease being a biological enigma? Perhaps offer him a pamphlet entitled How to Avoid a Grisly Demise from Consuming Toxic Extraterrestrial Flora? First, we observe," Frankel declared. "Perhaps the effects are merely delayed. Perhaps he'll begin to deteriorate imminently." They waited, observing as the human calmly finished his tea, stretched, and proceeded to water the Jalan spore fern with a repurposed plastic container bearing the puzzling inscription barbecue sauce. Finally, Blazer broke the silence. "I don't believe he's going to deteriorate." Frankel's eye stalks drooped in resignation. Neither do I. But I also doubt the Council will believe us when we report that one of the most lethal plants in the universe is apparently considered a light refreshment by the inhabitants of Earth. Blazer emitted a long, despairing groan. We should have remained on Quas-Laden. We could have been cataloguing innocuous lichen. But no, we had to venture to this planet of ambulatory, articulate chaos-inducing primates. And now, Frankel added grimly, we must devise a strategy to explain to the Federation that humanity may not only survive the deadliest plant in the galaxy but also find a method to prepare it with high heat and oil. Across the galaxy, bound by unyielding cosmic principles, humanity emerged not to conform, but to shatter expectations. This narrative defies conventional wisdom, challenging all preconceived notions about life among the stars. Alien botanists, creatures of meticulous documentation, found comfort in the predictability of their field. Paperwork, unlike sentient life forms, presented no unexpected threats. This preference for the anticipated explains Frankel Gribnitz's career choice. A squid-like botanist from Quasun, he could have pursued a life of combat or politics, but opted for the serenity of the plant kingdom. His colleague, Blazer Friat, a perpetually anxious being, shared this appreciation for botanical consistency. Their shared faith in the inherent order of plants amplified the unsettling nature of their current predicament. Invisible within their observational sphere, hovering above a modest human residence on Earth, they witnessed a spectacle so disturbing that even Blazer's multiple stomachs churned in a synchronized symphony of unease. Blazer, is that what I suspect it is? Frankel shrieked, his gelatinous form vibrating like a tremor-stricken pudding. Frankel, refining his visual instruments, focused intently on the verdant plant in the Earthling's garden. Indeed, if your suspicion involves the Jarlan spore fern, he confirmed, your observation is accurate. Blazer gesticulated wildly towards the flora in question. But that species is believed to be extinct. How can it thrive on this chaotic, carnivorous, utterly bewildering planet? Frankel shook what served as his head. A more pertinent question is, are you cognizant of the repercussions should any living organism make contact with its foliage? Instantaneous internal disintegration. Just then, a human materialized, a lanky, middle-aged specimen attired in what the extraterrestrials had classified as flip-flops, humming a melody vaguely reminiscent of a distorted terrestrial tune. Blazer seized Frankel in a frenzy of apprehension. What is he doing? He's nearing the fern. Shall we deploy a disintegration ray? Frankel shrugged off Blazer's appendage. Blazer, we are botanists, not warriors. We do not possess such weaponry. The human, utterly oblivious to the cosmic terror suspended just meters above, stooped and plucked a few leaves from the Jarlan spore fern. Then, with a casualness bordering on reckless abandon, he placed a leaf into his mouth and masticated. He's ingesting it. Blazer's vocalization reached a pitch typically employed for mating rituals on his home world. The human smacked his lips contemplatively. Requires sodium chloride, he mumbled, returning to his abode with an unexpected spring in his step and a basket laden with what the aliens perceived as imminent demise. Blazer crumpled into a quivering heap. He's perished. He's already perished. He simply hasn't registered it yet. However, Frankel's instruments indicated a different narrative. No, he remains viable. His vital signs are entirely within normal parameters. In fact, he squinted at the readings, he's humming. This is illogical? Blazer twitched violently. Humans, they've likely developed a tolerance by consuming things that should have obliterated them long ago. I read somewhere they ingest solidified lipids, which they refer to as butter. I cautioned you about this planet's hazardous environment. I warned you. Frankel paid him no mind, fixated on the human, who emerged moments later carrying what appeared to be a steaming mug of tea. His brewed a beverage, Frankel whispered, awestruck. A beverage? Blazer groaned pathetically. We must inform the Galactic Council. This exceeds our area of expertise, significantly exceeds it. We'll be fortunate if we aren't held accountable for this planet's inevitable annihilation. No, Frankel stated firmly. We are scientists. We collect information. We examine. And, if the situation demands it, we take action. Blazer appeared dubious. Take action? How? Request that he cease being a biological paradox? Offer him a brochure entitled Avoiding an Unpleasant End from Consuming Toxic Extraterrestrial Plants? First, we observe, Frankel declared. Perhaps the effects are simply delayed. Perhaps he'll begin to experience adverse reactions shortly. They waited, observing as the human serenely finished his tea, stretched, and then proceeded to water the Jarlan spore fern with a repurposed plastic jug inexplicably labeled barbecue sauce. At last, Blazer interrupted the silence. I don't think he's going to experience any adverse reactions. Frankel's eye stalks drooped in resignation. Neither do I. But I also don't believe the Council will believe us when we inform them that one of the deadliest plants in the cosmos is seemingly regarded as a light snack by Earth's inhabitants. Blazer emitted a prolonged, mournful sigh. We should have stayed on Quas-Laden. We could have been documenting harmless lichen. But no, we had to travel to this planet inhabited by ambulatory, articulate, chaos-generating primates. And now, Frankel added grimly, we must formulate a plan to explain to the Federation that humanity might not only withstand the most toxic plant in the galaxy, but also devise a way to cook it with high temperatures and oil. Frankel and Blazer hovered silently in their observation orb, gazing at the human's unassuming residence. Inside, the bipedal enigma was busily spreading what appeared to be a pured version of the galaxy's deadliest plant onto a piece of slightly charred bread. Look at him, Blazer, Frankel whispered. He's consuming it again. Casually, without any protective equipment, not even a ritualistic incantation to appease its potential wrath. Frankel, ever the scientist, diligently recorded his observations. It's remarkable. He doesn't even seem to be cognizant of the plant's lethal reputation. He's either blissfully unaware or humans are just biologically preposterous. Blazer twitched nervously. Biologically preposterous? This surpasses preposterous. This is biological hubris. Observe how he masticates. It's as if he's taunting the plant itself. Indeed, the human was not only chewing, he was humming a cheerful melody and applying more of the spore fern paste to another piece of toast. The audacity! Perhaps he is simply uninformed about its poisonous nature, Frankel suggested, although he didn't quite believe it himself. We could attempt to caution him. Caution him? Blazer gaped. And how do you propose we accomplish that? Materialize in his kitchen and announce, "Excuse me, but you're committing botanical suicide?" Do you believe he would take us seriously? As they debated, the human finished his meal, washed his hands, and, most alarmingly, began brewing what could only be described as spore fern tea. The two botanists watched in mounting disbelief as he poured steaming water over a handful of shredded leaves, inhaled deeply, and sighed contentedly. I can't bear to watch this any longer. Blazer cried, turning away dramatically. It's like watching someone juggle antimatter grenades for amusement. You must compose yourself, Frankel snapped. Recall the protocols, observe first, document second, intervene only if absolutely necessary. Blazer gestured with an appendage towards the human, who was now sipping his tea while scrolling on a handheld device that emitted faint beeping sounds. If this doesn't qualify as absolutely necessary, I don't know what does. He's imbibing liquid death, Frankel. Liquid death. Liquid death, Frankel muttered, that appears to be providing him with immense satisfaction. The human took another sip and chuckled at something on his device. The sound was unnervingly cheerful. Frankel and Blazer remained in their observation orb, transfixed by the human's seemingly reckless behavior. Inside his dwelling, the bipedal anomaly was now spreading a pulpy concoction, seemingly derived from the galaxy's most lethal flora, onto a piece of lightly toasted bread. Observe him, Blazer, Frankel murmured. He's consuming it once more. Nonchalantly, without any protective measures, not even a whispered prayer to ward off its potential vengeance. Frankel, ever the meticulous scientist, diligently documented his observations. It's truly remarkable. He appears completely unfazed by the plant's notorious toxicity. He's either blissfully ignorant or humans are simply biologically preposterous. Blazer twitched anxiously. Biologically preposterous? This transcends preposterous. This is biological arrogance. Witness his mastication. It's as though he's taunting the very essence of the plant itself. Indeed, the human wasn't just eating, he was humming a cheerful tune while liberally applying the spore fern paste to another piece of bread. The sheer audacity! Perhaps he remains uninformed about its venomous properties, Frankel proposed, though he himself harbored doubts. We could endeavor to warn him. Warn him? Blazer stared incredulously. And precisely how do you envision achieving that? Do we materialize within his kitchen and proclaim, "Pardon the interruption, but you're engaging in botanical self-destruction"? Do you honestly believe he would grant us any credence? While they debated, the human concluded his meal, cleansed his hands, and, to their escalating horror, commenced preparing what could only be classified as spore fern tea. The two botanists observed in mounting disbelief as he poured steaming liquid over a handful of shredded leaves, inhaled deeply, and emitted a contented sigh. "I cannot endure observing this any further," Blazer exclaimed, dramatically averting his gaze. "It's akin to witnessing someone juggling antimatter grenades for mere amusement." "Regain your composure," Frankel retorted sharply. "Recall the established protocols: observation first, documentation second, intervention only if unequivocally necessary." Blazer gestured an appendage toward the human, now leisurely sipping his tea while manipulating a handheld device that emitted intermittent beeps. "If this scenario doesn't constitute unequivocally necessary, I'm at a loss as to what does." "He's imbibing liquid demise, Frankel." "Liquid demise?" "Liquid demise," Frankel echoed thoughtfully, "which appears to be affording him considerable satisfaction." The human partook of another sip and chuckled at something displayed on his device. The sound was unsettlingly cheerful. This defies all logical explanation," Frankel stated, shaking his eye stalks. "Even if the plant underwent a mutation, its poisonous attributes should still elicit some form of adverse reaction: nausea, dizziness, spontaneous organ disintegration. But observe him. He's flourishing." Blazer crossed all 6 of his appendages. "I'm telling you, these humans are defective. Their biological makeup defies all reason. They consume caffeine in copious amounts, coat their sustenance in capsaicin, a natural irritant, and then wash it all down with carbonated acid. It's as if their entire species exists to taunt the universe into obliterating them." Frankel found himself unable to refute this assessment. The Federation had long regarded humanity as an anomaly, a species that persisted not through intellect or physical prowess, but through sheer, unyielding audacity. Their discourse was abruptly interrupted by a sudden movement. The human had risen, stretched, and was now proceeding towards his backyard, carrying a pair of rusty gardening shears. "What is his current objective?" Blazer whispered, his appendages trembling. They watched as the human approached the spore fern, crouched beside it, and commenced trimming its leaves. "He's harvesting it!" Blazer shrieked. "As though it were a common shrub. This is akin to approaching a black hole and declaring, 'You know what? I believe I'll just take a small nibble.'" Frankel, too, was struggling to maintain his composure. "He's domesticated it. The most perilous plant in the galaxy, and he treats it like a common kitchen herb." Blazer threw his appendages up in despair. "What next? Is he going to pickle it? Concoct a spore fern smoothie? Bake it into a pie?" As if on cue, the human straightened, clutching a handful of freshly clipped leaves. He gazed at the plant, gave it an affectionate pat, and murmured, "Good stuff. You'll make a great pesto." Blazer nearly succumbed to unconsciousness. "Pesto! We must communicate with him," Frankel declared suddenly. This defies all logical explanation," Frankel stated, his eye stalks quivering. "Even if the plant underwent some form of mutation, its toxic properties should still elicit some sort of adverse reaction: nausea, vomiting, spontaneous organ disintegration. But observe him. He's thriving." Blazer crossed all 6 of his appendages. I'm telling you, these humans are inherently flawed. Their biological makeup defies all reason. They ingest caffeine in copious amounts, douse their food in capsaicin, a known irritant, and then wash it all down with carbonated acid. It's as if their entire species exists solely to taunt the universe into obliterating them. Frankel found himself unable to dispute this assessment. The Federation had long considered humanity an anomaly, a species that persevered not through intellect or physical prowess, but through sheer, unyielding stubbornness. Their discussion was abruptly interrupted by a sudden movement. The human had risen, stretched, and was now moving towards his backyard, carrying a pair of rusty gardening shears. What is his current objective? Blazer whispered, his appendages trembling. They observed as the human approached the spore fern, knelt beside it, and began trimming its leaves. He's harvesting it. Blazer shrieked. As though it were a common garden vegetable. This is akin to strolling up to a supernova and declaring, you know what? I think I'll just pinch off a little souvenir. Frankel, too, was struggling to maintain his composure. He's cultivated it. The most hazardous plant in the galaxy, and he treats it like a common kitchen herb. Blazer threw his appendages up in despair. What's next? Is he going to ferment it? Concoct a spore fern smoothie? Bake it into a pie? As if in response, the human straightened, holding a handful of freshly cut leaves. He gazed at the plant, gave it an approving pat, and murmured, good stuff. You'll make a fantastic pesto. Blazer nearly fainted. Pesto. We must establish communication with him, Frankel declared abruptly. Blazer recoiled in horror. Are you insane? What if he attempts to offer it to us? If we don't intervene, Frankel countered, he's going to inadvertently poison his entire species. Imagine the consequences if he shares this pesto with others. Blazer hesitated, considering the horrifying possibility of spore fern-themed potlucks spreading across the planet. Finally, he relented. Fine. But you initiate the conversation. And if he offers me tea, I'm jumping into the nearest black hole. With that, they activated the orb's holographic projection system, prepared to make contact with a species whose apparent superpower was mistaking galactic poison for a delicious snack. The moment was fraught with tension. The orb's holographic projector flickered to life, casting an eerie luminescence in the human's kitchen as Frankel and Blazer materialized in their chosen forms, rounded, vaguely amicable shapes intended to minimize alarm among the locals. Unfortunately, their translation device, an aging relic of galactic standard engineering, proved less cooperative. The human, who had just finished blending his deadly pesto in a blender that sounded like it was powered by pure willpower, froze mid-scoop. What in the blue blazes, he exclaimed, dropping the spoon. Frankel stepped, or rather wobbled, forward. Greetings, he began, his voice slightly too loud as the translator sputtered ominously. We intend you no harm. The human blinked. Are you balloons? Talking balloons? Blazer muttered to Frankel, fantastic. He thinks we're party decorations. Stellar. Just stellar, Frankel waved an appendage, signaling for silence, and tried again. We come in, the translator buzzed with what sounded suspiciously like existential dread. The human squinted. Come again? Blazer elbowed Frankel aside, his nerves frayed. Listen, you. Cease consuming that plant. It's lethal. The translator mangled this into, consuming the sacred shrubbery will incinerate your inner being. The human tilted his head. You're not making any sense. But I'm intrigued. Incinerate, you say? Is this some kind of performance art? Blazer's patience evaporated. No, you imbecile. We're attempting to preserve your life. The device rendered this as, do not mock us, flesh being. We bring warnings of cosmic peril. The human raised an eyebrow, a small smirk playing on his lips. Cosmic peril from my basal substitute? Guys, I think you might need to lay off whatever galactic gas you're huffing. Frankel frantically adjusted the translator, desperate to salvage the conversation. Please. The plant you are ingesting is deadly. This, to their mild relief, translated correctly, and the human's face softened into genuine curiosity. Deadly? Like? I could drop dead right here? Yes. Frankel exclaimed immediately. Or possibly in several hours, depending on various factors. The human looked down at the bowl of pesto, then back at the aliens, unimpressed. Well, I've been eating it for weeks and I feel fine. In fact, I've never felt better. More energy, better digestion, fewer weird aches in my back. You sure you've got the right plant? Blazer flailed in exasperation. Fewer weird aches. This is impossible. That plant should be dissolving your spleen as we speak. The human crossed his arms defiantly. First of all, what's a spleen, and do I really need it? Second, have you guys tried it? I'm telling you, it's delicious. Like minty spinach with a kick. Blazer recoiled in horror. Tried it? You might as well ask us to swallow a live star. Frankel, more composed, took a different approach. Perhaps, Frankel ventured, his tone cautious, there's been a mutation. Earth's unique environment might have altered the fern's chemical properties. He paused, then added, almost as an afterthought, or perhaps your species is just remarkably resilient. The human chuckled. Resilient? Oh, buddy, you have no idea. You should see what we do to potatoes, deep-fried, mashed, baked, loaded with cheese. It's like we're determined to humiliate nature. Blazer covered his sensory nodes. I can't listen to this. It's worse than I feared. The human leaned casually against the counter, holding the bowl of pesto like a trophy. So, you're telling me this stuff could kill other species, but for humans, it's just a tasty garnish. That's kind of cool. No, it's not cool. Blazer snapped. It's a freakish anomaly. Frankel sighed. We need to analyze the plant and your physiology. If this is a mutation, it could have unforeseen consequences. For all we know, you might spontaneously combust in a week. The human seemed unfazed. Well, if I do, I promise I won't hold it against you. Want some pesto? He held out the bowl. Both aliens recoiled. Absolutely not, they said in unison. The human shrugged and took a casual bite. Your loss. You know, for intergalactic beings, you two are pretty uptight. Blazer twitched. Uptight? We're trying to save your life, you ungrateful carbon-based menace. Frankel intervened before Blazer could spontaneously combust himself. We'll need a sample of your blood and a few of the plant's leaves for testing. Sure, the human said easily. But only if you let me serve you tea. Deal. The aliens exchanged a horrified glance. The human, who had introduced himself as Dave, grinned, misinterpreting their silence as agreement. Great. I'll put the kettle on. The kettle hissed ominously as Dave prepared what could only be described as the most ill-advised diplomatic beverage in galactic history. Frankel and Blazer hovered uneasily at the table, their gelatinous forms visibly twitching every time Dave whistled a cheerful tune. You two need to relax, Dave said, pouring steaming water into 3 mismatched mugs. I promise you're going to love this tea. It's got a real zing to it. We are not drinking that, Blazer declared, eyeing the mugs as if they were miniature black holes. Do you even understand the concept of poison or self-preservation? Dave chuckled. Oh, I understand poison just fine. Grew up in Australia, mate. Deadly spiders, snakes, jellyfish. One time I accidentally drank from a puddle full of tadpoles and got the worst stomach bug of my life. He handed them their mugs. Builds character, you know. Blazer turned to Frankel in despair. He's insane. Certifiably insane. Perhaps it's just cultural, Frankel muttered, though even he sounded unconvinced. He cautiously poked the mug, watching the liquid ripple with the faint greenish hue of the Jarlan spore fern. Dave sat across from them, slurping his tea with enthusiasm. Ah, hits the spot. You sure you don't want any? It'll clear your sinuses right up. Blazer let out a strangled noise. Sinuses? If we drink this, it'll clear us out of existence. Frankel decided it was time to regain control of the situation. Dave, he began carefully, we appreciate your hospitality, truly. But this isn't about whether your digestive system is made of reinforced neutronium. We need to understand how this plant mutated on Earth. Its toxicity levels shouldn't just disappear like this. Dave leaned back, sipping his tea. Well, I don't know much about science stuff, but maybe it's the soil? Or the air? Could be all the barbecue smoke. Humans are always lighting something on fire. Blazer looked horrified. Your atmosphere is a combination of poison plants and smoke clouds? How are you still alive? Dave shrugged. Sheer stubbornness, I reckon. Anyway, you're welcome to take some of the leaves for your fancy space tests. Just leave me enough for my pesto. Frankel hesitated. And you're sure no one else has eaten this plant? Dave grinned. Oh, I've shared it with the neighbors. Made a batch of spore fern salsa for our last barbecue. They loved it. Said it was zesty. Blazer clutched his sensory nodes. He's spreading it. It's contagious. Frankel's appendages flew across the orb's control panel. This is extraordinary, he exclaimed, his voice trembling with a mixture of disbelief and burgeoning scientific excitement. Blazer, still recovering from the near-fatal tea experience, peered over Frankel's shoulder. What now? He croaked. Did the human's DNA finally disintegrate? No, Frankel replied, his eye stalks widening with each passing moment. It's the plant. The toxicity levels, they are not merely reduced, they're completely non-existent. Neutralized. Dave, oblivious to the cosmic implications of this discovery, simply nodded as if this were the most normal thing in the world. See? Harmless. Probably good for you, too. Blazer slumped onto the floor of the orb, his multiple stomachs giving a collective groan of despair. This is a nightmare. An absolute nightmare. The deadliest plant in the galaxy, reduced to a condiment. But Frankel wasn't listening. He was engrossed in analyzing the plant sample Dave had provided, his mind racing with the implications. Wait, he muttered, his eye stalks twitching rapidly. This isn't just neutralization. The chemical composition, it's been altered. In a way that enhances flavor. It's become palatable. Blazer gaped at him. Palatable? As in marketable? Frankel's eye stalks vibrated with excitement. Precisely. This could revolutionize galactic cuisine. A plant once feared across star systems, transformed into a delicacy. The culinary possibilities are limitless. Dave grinned. Told you it was good. You aliens are a bit dramatic, aren't ya? Blazer groaned. Dramatic? You're casually consuming a galactic death plant, we're the dramatic ones. Frankel, ignoring Blazer's existential crisis, began rapidly calculating. If we can replicate these conditions, we could introduce this as a premium ingredient across the Federation. It would be worth a fortune. Dave raised an eyebrow. So, what you're saying is, I've accidentally created space gourmet food. Does that mean I'm rich? Blazer threw his appendages in the air. Great, now he's delusional. Can this day get any worse? Just then, Dave's neighbor appeared at the back door, holding an empty bowl. Hey Dave, he called out. Got any more of that pesto? The wife says it's the best thing she's ever tasted. Blazer buried his sensory nodes in his appendages. We're doomed. The entire galaxy is doomed. Frankel, however, was smiling. No, Blazer. This might just be the beginning of something truly extraordinary. Dave beamed. See? Told YA. Humans know how to make the best of anything. Even space poison. Blazer continued muttering about impending galactic doom, while Frankel completed his calculations. The results were undeniable. The Jarland spore fern, once infamous for its ability to reduce entire civilizations to puddles of goo, had undergone a miraculous transformation on Earth. The molecular restructuring is remarkable, Frankel announced, his voice buzzing with excitement. It's not just safe for human consumption, it actually appears to enhance their metabolism. If we present this to the Federation as a premium culinary item, we could secure research funding for generations. Blazer groaned. Funding? Oh, splendid. Perhaps we can use it to erect a monument to the plant that almost eradicated us all. Dave, blissfully unaware of the near apocalypse he had narrowly averted, scooped another generous helping of pesto onto his toast. You guys really need to lighten up. Have you even tried this stuff yet? Blazer flinched as Dave offered the plate towards them. Do you think we have a death wish? Frankel, however, hesitated. His scientific curiosity wrestled with his instinct for self-preservation. Slowly, cautiously, he extended an appendage and dipped it into the vibrant green pesto. Frankel! Blazer yelped. What are you doing? Science, Frankel replied simply, retracting his appendage and examining the glowing green residue. He paused for a fraction of a second, then placed the appendage into his sensory intake. Blazer stared, his gelatinous form frozen in horrified fascination. You ate it. You've doomed us all. The Federation will write operas about our stupidity. But Frankel didn't dissolve. In fact, his eye stalks twitched in what could only be described as pleasure. By the nebula, he murmured. It's extraordinary. Blazer blinked, or would have if he possessed eyelids. Extraordinary? You mean you're not dead? Quite the opposite, Frankel declared, licking the pesto from his appendage with relish. It's tangy, with a subtle hint of sweetness. And a delightful minty aftertaste. Dave grinned. See? Told YA it was good. Blazer stared at them both, his sanity rapidly unraveling. Have you both lost your minds? This is not normal behavior. Frankel turned to him, extending the plate. Blazer, you must try it. For science. Blazer recoiled as if the plate contained a miniature supernova. I will not. I refuse to become a cautionary tale in a galactic textbook. Dave chuckled. Suit yourself. More for me. Just then, the observation orb's console beeped loudly. Frankel rushed over, his appendages flying across the controls. The Federation is hailing us, he announced. They must have intercepted our initial readings on the spore fern. Blazer groaned. Oh, wonderful. Now we'll be court-martialed for incompetence. I always knew I'd die in disgrace. The holographic display flickered to life, revealing a stern-faced representative from the Galactic Federation. Frankel, Blazer, the representative barked. Report your findings immediately. Frankel straightened. Representative Galx, we've made a groundbreaking discovery. The Jarland spore fern hasn't merely mutated on Earth, it's become a viable, even beneficial food source for humans. Galx frowned. Beneficial? Are you suggesting the plant's toxicity has been neutralized? Not merely neutralized, Frankel countered. Transformed. It's now a culinary delicacy. Galx's expression shifted from skepticism to outright disbelief. A culinary delicacy? Prove it. Blazer gasped. Prove it? Before anyone could object, Frankel turned to Dave. Would you mind demonstrating? Gladly, Dave replied, grabbing the bowl of pesto. He took a large bite of his pesto-laden toast, chewed with obvious enjoyment, and gave a thumbs up to the hologram. Delicious. You guys should try it. Galx stared in stunned silence. This defies all logic. Welcome to Earth, Dave said with a grin. The line went silent for a moment as Galx processed this information. Finally, he spoke. Very well. Submit your findings. If verified, this could be a significant discovery. But, Frankel, Blazer, ensure this remains contained. The Federation isn't ready for an Earth-led culinary revolution. The transmission ended. Blazer collapsed into a gelatinous heap. Contained? Contained. We're dealing with humans. They'll have this thing deep-fried and sold at carnivals by next week. Dave raised a finger. Actually, that's not a bad idea. Think spacefolk would pay for a fried spore fern on a stick? Frankel's eye stalks gleamed. There's potential here. A galactic delicacy originating from Earth could elevate the planet's standing within the Federation. Blazer groaned. Or destroy it when someone inevitably chokes on it. Dave extended a hand to the aliens. Tell you what. You guys handle the science, and I'll handle the marketing. Together, we'll make history. Or at least, dinner. Frankel took his hand. Deal. Blazer wailed, we're all doomed. But as the three of them stood in the tiny kitchen, surrounded by the faintly minty aroma of galactic death-turned delicacy, one thing was certain: Earth, and perhaps the galaxy, would never be the same.